Impact is a paradigm. And within the paradigm, within the frame of the paradigm of impact, when two energy patterns collide, both are changed by the interaction. And in the law of mass, when a larger pattern of energy collides with a smaller pattern of energy, when a bowling ball collides with a pinball, the pinball goes flying and the bowling ball continues on its original trajectory. This is the law of mass, and it's within the framework of the paradigm of impact. That every meeting on every dimension in some way changes, alters the course, the probability field of both patterns of energy. And specifically looking at human impact, the impact that we have on one another, the impact of a person on a cult or culture, the impact of a cult or culture on a person, on a family. When looking through the paradigm of impact and understanding impact, there are two distinct positions through which to experience and explore this paradigm of impact. And the first position is dependence, and the second position is independence or freedom. Now, when we look at are we dependent or are we independent, we can't answer that without looking at dependent on what, or dependent on whom, for what. For example, if we're trying to buy an ice cream, we may be dependent on the ice cream vendor to be in the vicinity. If we're looking to breathe, we may be dependent on life, on the pattern of nature to produce enough oxygen. You see, oxygen is the shit of trees. Trees take in carbon dioxide, which is the shit of lungs. It's the waste. It's the byproduct. It's what we give out. And what a tree gives out is oxygen. And so in order to continue to survive, we are in a dependent relationship with our ecology. The trees must keep shitting oxygen, and there must be enough trees to do it. And we must have access to that oxygen. We can't be in a sealed cave or a sealed glass jar. We have to have access. But in a more useful sense of questioning this paradigm of impact and dependence and independence, every human being in the history of humanity has shared common needs. And Abraham Maslow did research on different cultures and civilizations around the world to identify the paradigm of a hierarchy of needs. And in a hierarchy, you first focus on level one. For example, a 3-story building is a hierarchical structure. You can't build the 3rd floor before you build the 1st floor. And similarly, in the hierarchy of human needs, you cannot build level 4. You cannot meet your need for level 4 when level 1 is not met. And the first need of every human being in the history of humanity is to survive. So it's obvious that one couldn't meet subsequent needs if one did not survive. And so it's, self-evident. The first need is to survive. The second need is to feel security in that survival. And this involves a couple of different things. If one has been traumatized, i.e., experienced one's identity, one's pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being shattered repeatedly by a larger mass, by a mass out of attunement with our identity, our pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being. If we have been traumatized, then we do not trust the unknown, because all reality at birth and in infancy was unknown. And when we're traumatized in that state, when we encounter large masses of energy with no empathy, no attunement, no understanding, no love for our pattern, the world becomes a scary place in our eyes. The reptilian brain, the ancient crocodile brain that's 200 million years old. The sociopathic brain kicks in. It's fight that which is smaller than you. Run from that which is bigger than you. Freeze when neither of those options are available, and when you become more sophisticated, fawn, or make yourself indispensable to a sociopath in power who will protect you in exchange for your usefulness. Not in exchange for your value, your being, but for your usefulness. If you can make yourself useful to a sociopath, then they will protect you in some way, give you the shield of money, give you the shield of legal support, etc. Not because you're valuable as a human being, but because if they do not protect you and you are useful to them, their base of power, their asset base shrinks. And so it's an enlightened self-interest. When you have been traumatized, you do not trust the unknown, because all trauma emerges initially out of the unknown. And so in order to move towards security, the second in the hierarchy of human need, one has to develop agency or control or influence. One must understand in this scary world how one can avoid the danger. One must understand, how did the danger happen? Why did the danger happen? And what can I do to have control over the environment so that the danger doesn't happen again? Because all fear is fear of pain in the past repeating itself in the future. All fear is fear of pain. All human beings in the history of humanity want to feel sustainably better, want to avoid feeling chronically worse. Trauma is the worst you can feel. Trauma is a large pattern of energy which produces helplessness, because whenever a small pattern of energy collides with a large pattern of energy, the bowling ball always throws the pinball to the side. Whenever a larger pattern of energy violates a smaller pattern of energy, the smaller energy is always violated. And so there is no sense of security or safety until one has a strategy for getting out of the way of these larger sociopathic balls of energy that come rolling through reality with the cyclical nature of a bully getting out of school, of a pedophile getting hungry, of a government official needing another bribe to pay their gambling debt. The cyclical nature of that larger ball of energy, of impact, means that unless we have a response, unless we have agency in the interaction, we are doomed to repeat the greatest pain, the greatest fear we have ever known. We are doomed to reenact, to be in the effect of trauma, and potentially have that trauma escalate into PTSD, where the identity is so traumatized, is so shaken, is so shattered. The pattern that we had before of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being is so shattered that as we try to recover it, we feel nothing but hopelessness, helplessness, and despair. We can't hold the pattern. There's a sense, I'm going to lose it. I'm going to lose it, what? The coherence, the pattern. I can't hold the pattern. And what PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome, is in many ways, is having lost the original pattern through the trauma of violation, through the trauma of that bowling ball passing too many times over the trajectory of the pinball and scattering that pattern, is that we need an identity, we need a pattern, we need a sense of I. And when the trauma becomes more substantive, more solid than the identity that was shattered by the traumatic event, we refocus our identity, our pattern around the traumatic event. Now I am defined by the most painful moments of my life that relive over and over again. And what I'm in search for in that moment is stability. Because if I identify with, if I say, okay, I'm going to hang on to this pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being, that my old identity could not counter. My old identity was defeated by the traumatic identity. The traumatic identity prevailed and prevailed and prevailed to such an extent of helplessness, to such an extent of dysregulation, chaos, and fear of the unknown, that in my desperate search for stability, for solidity, I cling and grasp and identify with the pattern that comes out ahead of my old identity every single time, the pattern of the event that destroyed my identity, the pattern of shock, the pattern of pain, the pattern of betrayal, the pattern of fear and terror. And I relive that event. I form a new pattern, a new identity that is the traumatic self, the traumatic moment, the pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being, that nothing that I've been able to find so far has been able to stand up to. I was 2 years old. Billy was 6'10". Every single time I tried to run away, he caught me. He pushed me down. I was 20 pounds. The untrained dog was 35 pounds. Every time I tried to run away in the tall grass, it pounced. I never won. The terror, the helplessness of that moment, the sense I can't go back to this identity because it's not stable. I can't face the desperate need to survive and feel secure in that survival as an identity, as a sense of me, my pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being. I can't face it knowing I am completely unprotected by anyone. But I can change my identity. I can let go of what I could not defend. In response to one violation, of superior mass over the other. I can let go of what I could not defend when I was small. And I can attach to a new identity, a new pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being, in which I am the traumatic event. If the traumatic event is the most potent event in my entire life, and I define myself by that event, now I am strong, now I am solid. I don't know how to win in the healing and the transformation and the release or integration of the trauma, but I know how to become identified with the trauma. Now, sometimes this happens with the abuser, and this is the infection, the infestation of intergenerational abuse. Every time Dad hit me as I was 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, every single time Dad hit me, I could not defend myself. The identity of a helpless, hurting, terrified child is too overwhelming of an identity to own. It's too paralyzing for me to identify with the body that is being repeatedly mauled in a dynamic of force that guarantees failure every single time, that ensures that my greatest fear of my greatest pain happening again will happen again. And there's no one who will help me. There is no one who will defend me. And I've got years of dependency, financially, socially, mentally, emotionally, physically. I've got years of dependency on this giant before I can leave. I can't bear to occupy the body of the one who is small. And so I dissociate, I disown that identity, and I identify. I start to perceive the world not as the one who is being mauled, but as the one who is doing the mauling. I stop identifying it with the terror that I feel at 6 years old facing the giant of a drunken father. And I start identifying, I start projecting my identity into the giant that can stand up and beat the 6-year-old as a larger pattern of energy. Now I am the giant in my mind, and I'm not looking out of the terrified eyes of shame and helplessness that is 6 years old. I'm looking at the 6-year-old with contempt. As the disowned self, I am rejecting. I am moving away from. And I'm feeling the sense of power, the antidote to my helplessness. My new identity is the abuser. I don't experience the abuse of the giant as a little one. I dissociate from my body, and I imagine how satisfying it must be to beat the shit out of a 6-year-old and have absolute mastery of the situation. Because every giant, every drunken father, every abusive mother, every older brother that terrorizes the small, the young, the weak, the feminine, is doing so to antidote helplessness, to take some area of their life where they feel just like that child, where they can't win. They can't talk back to the boss because they'll be fired. And they can't be fired because then they have no money in a sociopathic cult that values money more than human beings, that values the creation or symbol of value, money, that human beings make more than the human beings that make them. In a sociopathic environment of scarcity, your employee values you as an employer for the money you provide more than they value you as a human being. And your employer values the money you make for them more than they value you as a human being. And as soon as you are not useful, as soon as the boss will not pay, as soon as the employee does not generate a profit, there is a dissociation. And when the boss is not fair, when the boss is incompetent, when the boss is abusive, but in that position of power, it creates a feeling of frustration and helplessness for all the employees under that boss in a tyrannical pyramid of power. And all of that energy cannot be expressed. But when you get home and there's a 6-year-old who cannot fight back, there is such pleasure in tormenting that child into tears, in leaving the dog whimpering, because now I cease to be close and tender and identified with the losing part in a sociopathic conflict. Now I'm the winning part. And that is the medicine. All medicine moves towards balance. All extremes are toxic, be they acid or alkaline, heat or cold, black or white, all time and no money, or all money and no time. All extremes are toxic in their extremity and medicinal in their balance in a given context. If one feels incredibly helpless and cannot redress the imbalance, the toxicity in one relationship, one redresses the imbalance by moving helplessness towards power or dominance in another relationship. Not a relationship in which you're going to lose, a relationship in which you're guaranteed to win. Hence, the vast majority of children, as the only ones guaranteed to lose in any collision of mass, are used as the antidote for systemic helplessness, for systemic incompetence, for systemic fear and pain. I cannot confront the boss. I cannot get my husband to stop hitting me. But I can do whatever I want with this child. I can medicate the powerlessness and frustration with dominance, with certainty, with control. I can tickle you as much as I want. You can scream and beg me not to tickle. I'm going to do it anyway. And what's more with so many of these intergenerational abuse dynamics is most parents don't like the political implications of saying, I feel helpless, hopeless, endlessly frustrated, and need to vent it out, but I'm too scared of venting it with the people in my cult, in my family, in my larger reality. So I do it with my children. It's kind of a little bit unpleasant to own that level of cruelty as an underbelly of our cult. I don't really like that, but I have an out, you see, because when my mom tickled me, despite all of my protests, she called it love. and she got her power hit. And none of the guilt of violating my boundaries, because she just relabeled all of her abuse and all of my protests. You know, she said, I really wanted it. That's why I was laughing, right? That's what a rapist says when a woman has an orgasm, when a man has an orgasm while being raped. Just because you can grind an orgasm out of someone does not mean it is a respect for their freedom of choice to grab their body, pin them down, and rape them. Just because you can make a child laugh doesn't mean it's fun for them to be tickled. Just because you can push and refuse to honor all boundaries does not mean that it's fun for a child to be in a helpless power dynamic where they will be punished for holding a boundary, and where their boundaries will be systemically pushed through with invasiveness, with bullying, with violence, with shaming, with screaming, with hitting, with tickling, or with sexual fondling or straight out rape. When that's too much for the ego to deal with, to identify, to dissociate with the one who cannot win and associate with the one in power, leads to a new identity. The identity, the pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, being, and doing that is the abuser, and a new abuser is born. And if the last abuser was effective at brainwashing and cross-wiring the abuse to call it love, for your own good, as Alice Miller would say in her book of the same title, for your own good. I hurt you, but it was for your own good. I lied to you, I betrayed you, but you had to grow up. It's for your own good that I'm a hypocrite, that I don't follow the rules, that I violate your boundary again and again and again, for your own good. When that brainwashing is effective, and the identity of the abuser is more sustainable than the betrayed identity of the victim, you either have the PTSD of identifying with the wound, that is pretty stable as well. Because if it's the worst moment of your life, you can relive it endlessly and no one can knock it away. It's too intense. You can hold on to your greatest fear. It's easy to lose track of joy when someone whacks you over the head, but you can hang on to pain and bitterness and rage. And the more people whack you, the stronger those feelings become. If you identify with hate, pain, revenge, terror, disgust, the more abuse that goes on around you, the stronger your identity will grow. Because it is an identity of the wound, in the wound. And the more wounding that goes on, the more your identity has fuel, makes sense, can be remembered, put back together again. It is the innocence and the joy that is shattered. So there's a movement from unbearable helplessness and despair to mastery and control. And when it is in a sociopathic dominance hierarchy, the giant, the oldest brother, male bodies are stronger than female bodies statistically. That's why the Olympics is separated by gender. The men would win every time if the fastest men were racing against the fastest women. If the biggest boxer biggest male boxer was boxing the biggest female boxer. The male body is superior in physical combat, all things being equal. And so in a law of mass, it is the big one that beats the small one, the old one that beats the young one, the male that beats the female. And if your femininity is shattered and violated and shamed and humiliated too many times, the helplessness of the old identity, the old pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being, loses its coherence. That pattern falls away. And the shamed, chauvinistically wounded little girl becomes a chauvinist herself, aspires. All conquered nations aspire and in some way admire the cult that conquered them. Because in the evolutionary movement of development, as long as you are in a scarcity dynamic that is sociopathic, the fastest one, the strongest one, the most ruthless one, the most sociopathic and agile warrioress or warrior will come out on top, will have the control that the victim longs for, the agency that the child is desperately seeking in order to grow up. They will admire their conqueror and seek to become more like them until they succeed. In this way, the virus of sociopathic dominance moves cross-culturally and moves intergenerationally within the cult of dominance. Initiation into a cult of violence and dominance. In the Klingon paradigm, it is killing your supervisor. Now, you have mastered the cult in a dominance hierarchy based on fight, flight, freeze. In the reptilian paradigm, in order to ascend, one must kill the conqueror. One must slay the dragon or be enslaved by it. And so evolution moves forward within the reptilian operating system, within the sociopathic brain, based on pain, fear, scarcity, and the law of mass. The goal is win-lose, to become better, to run away from the conqueror until one can be strong enough, has enough allies, has enough strategy, enough mass to beat the oppressor and move from the underdog to the bully. And this is the evolutionary path. As one cult terrorizes another cult to such a point of pain, to such a point of fear, that they have nothing to lose. This puts in motion a countermeasure, a cooperation, a desire, a comeback that has fuel. All of the fuel of pain given to it now comes back towards the aggressor, who, like all patterns that are static and lack strong motivation. You see, in a sociopathic paradigm, fear of pain is the primary driver. And when you're on top, you don't feel as much pain or fear as when you're on the bottom. And when fear is the primary driver of the reptilian operating system, you get fat. The Romans get decadent because there's not enough fear to keep them hungry. But their enemies, tyrannized by the Romans, are hungry, are scared, and are driven, which is why the cycle of power is inevitable. The physics of dominance hierarchies, the physics of fear and the reptilian brain, guarantee an endless cycle from top dog to underdog to top dog to underdog, with all of the gradients in between. And this protocol leads to excellence. It leads to competency. Fear of pain and pain itself lead to awareness. Awareness leads to understanding. Understanding leads to success. And success comes from competency. Competency emerges out of fear and pain, of fear of pain. The more a bully, the more a nation dominates and terrorizes a victim, an enemy, a small one, the more that fear of pain will crystallize into competency, into shrewdness, into a coldness, because you must dissociate from your humanity in order to endure the pain of torture. When you torture an enemy, you take them into their reptilian brain where they have no feeling, and so they can survive the pain, usually with the primary focus of destroying you. And that kind of single-minded focus, spread across a few hundred years amongst hundreds, if not millions of people, is powerful. And it ensures the cycle of power, which leads to excellence, which leads to competency, which leads to abundance. And that's where we get the transition from fear of pain towards mastery and growth. That's where we see the movement from the reptilian brain through transitioning through the enlightened self-interest of the rational brain to the empathic brain, the first brain that's capable of being human. The pattern analyzing brain, the rational brain, is not the brain of a human. It is of a very sophisticated predator. It is of a scary, smart sociopath. When the rational brain is in service of the reptilian brain that has no empathy, that fights to kill and destroy that which is weaker than it and exploit it, to feed on the young. The big companies bloated with malaise and incompetence that use money and legal methods in a capitalistic dogfight to destroy, to rip apart more competent companies, because they can. Because when you're just starting out with $100,000, Microsoft can bury you with a $30 billion war chest, which Bill Gates amassed for that purpose, to fight off the aggressor and to consume its prey. In this dynamic, in this reptilian dynamic, the rational brain is a very smart snake. It brings consciousness into the sociopathic drives of the reptile. It is not human. But when there is enough abundance created by competency, you see, life produces the reptilian brain in order to help the species survive, to compete with other members of the species, but also to compete with other species, to breed excellence, because only the excellent survive. When the tiger attacks the gazelle, you see, the smartest, fastest gazelle gives the alert, tiger, and runs. She always outruns the pack and escapes. The elderly lag behind, the newly born, the handicapped, the disabled, the recently wounded, the confused, the mentally unstable. These gazelles are always at the rear, and they are the feast. They are the prey of the lion. The lion attacks the elderly, attacks the children, attacks the sick, attacks the mentally retarded, the ones with the slowest reflexes, and takes those out of the gene pool. Now, what's left are the fastest gazelles. Now, as the gazelles get faster and faster because the lion keeps eating off the hindmost part of the pack, the ones that are getting too old. So the lion will eat the little old lady who's getting a little bit senile because she doesn't run as fast as the 20-something. As the lion eats off the laggards in evolution, the gazelle keeps breeding the fastest with the fastest. And the gazelles get faster and faster with each generation, which means that the slowest lions can no longer catch the prey. And by becoming excellent at running, at flight, the gazelles challenge the sick, the elderly, in the lions to go hungry and die off. And only the fastest, the youngest, the smartest of the lions can still run, can still catch the gazelle herd that's getting faster and healthier as its sick and elderly are eaten off from the rear. In this way, life ensures that the lions continue to mutate towards excellence and the gazelles continue to mutate towards excellence. And there is a collaboration to bring out the excellence that is in the core Latin of compete, to draw out the best in the other. To compete, to draw out the best in the other. If you want to improve your tennis game, you've got to play with someone better than you. If you want to ruin your tennis game, play with someone that doesn't know what the hell they're doing. Play with someone who's erratic, Half the time they don't even get the ball off the net. They will train you for stupidity. You've got to play with someone better than you if you want to become excellent at tennis. If you want the gazelle herd to keep running faster, to stay young and vital, to keep mutating towards creativity, you need the lion to eat off the sick and the elderly, the ones that are mutating in a slower direction. And for the lions to keep growing, there needs to be a certain number of them that starve, because those are the ones that are least capable of hunting. And for the lions to excel, the ones that are most competent at hunting must get the food and have the energy to mate, so that the next generation will come from the best lions capable of hunting. It is the sociopathic edict of dominance and competence hierarchies. The best feast and the worst die off. Now, this happens up to a point. This is plan A in the evolutionary journey. Plan B in the evolutionary journey is rational pattern analyzing. See, nature can do pattern number A, plan A, with complete randomness and unconsciousness. The lions don't have to say, let's make sure that we help the gazelles get even faster this year. And the gazelles don't have to say, let's help the lions evolve. No, it's life. Life's instinctive program, the same program that took a universe from less than the size of a pea and made it into more than 1 billion life-affirming planets in our galaxy alone, and made all the species out of nothing. That program strives towards excellence in a collaborative competition, a challenge to bring out the best in the other, to see which forms of life can outcompete other forms of life and grow. And when there's no more competition, nothing to bring out the best in you, there can be a lethargy, there can be a deterioration. When no one fights back to the Romans, they can become sick. When the lions can walk out and moving 1 mile an hour, eat 3 or 4 gazelles just laying there, not defending themselves, the lions become sick. They don't have to fight. They don't have to run. It's the competition, the drawing out of the best in the other, that is the challenge. So this is program A in evolution. Rationality, the observation of what's going on, of pattern analysis, that's program B, the sophisticated reptile. But at a certain point of sophistication, you get a certain point of competence. At a certain point of competence, you have a certain level of abundance. And that abundance is like warmth. It's like being out in the sun. It's the phenomena today where there is more food produced than every human on the planet could possibly eat. 50% of all food in the United States is thrown out. There is more food produced on the planet today than all the people on the planet could possibly eat. When you get competency at high levels, bred initially out of the reptilian program, then out of the rational reptile, you get abundance. And with abundance comes a reduction in pain and a reduction in fear. And with a reduction of pain and a reduction of fear and abundance, the bud, the blossom of the empathic, of the human being, open. A human being emerges, held tightly for thousands of years in the cold temperatures of fear of pain and of pain, awakens. And the empathic brain emerges, and the human being emerges, which is the opposite of the sociopathic brain. It is the opposite of the reptile, because the crocodile will attack the 5-year-old little boy and leave the couple that's walking a few feet ahead. Why? Because the crocodile wants to win. The crocodile is still in a scarcity mentality. And so the big must prey on the small. But the human is the opposite. The empathic brain says no. If someone's going to die, let it be the older one. Women and children first. That's empathy. That's humanity. It is a new operating system. And it doesn't descend. It does not come into being until it is relevant. And it is not relevant as long as the competency is so low that we're in deep pain, fear due to scarcity. Because when you have this much energy across the entire universe, when there is scarcity, it is because you do not know what you're doing. For there to be any scarcity at all of our human needs to survive, feel secure in that survival, experience love and belonging, experience self-esteem, understand what our gifts are, and develop those gifts, bring those gifts meaningfully and abundantly into the larger environment, and become part of something bigger than ourselves. There is so much energy in so many forms available for that purpose that for every human being not to be abundantly filled and fulfilled in all of their human needs is a symptom of profound incompetence. And it is reptilian behavior that breeds competence out of fear, of pain, that comes from incompetence. When you are throwing away 50% of the food in a country for there to be starving people is a symptom not only of the reptilian brain, the sociopathic brain, but of profound incompetence. If you do not have meaningful love and belonging for all of you in your life, you are in an incompetent ecology, an incompetent cult that is so incompetent it will not own its incompetence, that is so uneducated it cannot name what it doesn't know. If you are in scarcity, you are in incompetence. And it's not personal. It just means that the reptilian brain has more work to do in the space, because the reptilian brain breeds competency. That's the pinnacle of the sociopathic edict. That with enough pain and fear, a certain percentage of people will be so motivated by terror and fear to survive and feel secure that they will ascend the dominance hierarchy to the pinnacle better than the generation before them, and evolution will take place. And at some point, that level of competency leads to some obvious equations. For example, in our cult, 60% of the mental, emotional, and financial and physical energy of the entire cult is spent on defense and managing pain and fear. 60% of your cult, 60% of your time, your money, your attention is spent in fear, directly or indirectly, managing for pain and scarcity. Put money away for a rainy day. Lock the doors so no one can get in. Get the car alarm. Hire insurance in case something goes wrong. Pay enormous sums in taxes to dominate the planet militarily. Hire private detectives to find out what's going on. Have gossip. Try and figure out. Look at your partner's cell phone to see what they're really doing. It's all defense. 60% of our energy, mentally, emotionally, physically, financially, culturally, is being spent on defense. Defense against what? Defense against pain. Pain from what? Sociopathic behavior. When you are surrounded by reptiles, they can be depended upon statistically to be sociopathic. You see, when you go to a New Age retreat and it's all wonderful, you all undress, you all put your clothes in here and do this and that, the other, and you stand in the circle and it's all love. It just takes one person in 100 to steal a Rolex, and you go back to the locker and I put it here, and there's a thief in the room. There's a thief in the room, and there's always one in 100. In a reptilian cult, it doesn't matter how highfalutin your brochure is. In a reptilian cult that traumatizes its young and does not heal the trauma, there will always be one person in terror, pain, and scarcity in 100. And it only takes one for the entire animal herd to waken up the reptilian brain and say, we got to watch out. I don't want to be next. Maybe they're a murderer as well. And the entire event collapses into reptilian paranoia. Don't get too close. Don't let them. What if they're lying? What if this is... Yeah, that sounds too good for... They say they love me. What do they want? What do they want? Now, the reason we can say for certain that we're incompetent and that competency is needed is that it is patently insane for a rational human being to spend 60% of the entire cult energy ecology defending from sociopathic behavior that we simultaneously participate in. In other words, if we live in this cult, every single one of us behaves sociopathically from time to time, maybe all the time, maybe from time to time. Now, we just have to lie once to our partner before they're aware that we could lie again. Now they have to spend 60% of their energy second-guessing us. It's very inefficient. How stupid do you have to be to cause your partner to spend 60% of their energy second-guessing you because you were too dumb to tell the truth 100% of the time? Do you think that's intelligent? Do you think it's expedient? It isn't. You're a fucking moron. Join the club. Join the club. You're a fucking moron. Join the club. Because that's the club that we're in. We don't have the competence to stop that one lie, to stop that one betrayal. And so we throw away 60% of our quality of life to defend against the betrayals and incompetences of those around us. We hoard in fear and pain. And despite more energy than we could possibly absorb as a species to meet all of our human needs for every one of us, a majority of our species has not met level 3 in the hierarchy of human needs: survival, security, love, and belonging. The majority of Americans, the most energy consumptive cult in the history of humanity. Do you know if you're an American and you're average, you'll leave 100 tons of waste in a landfill or in an incinerator by the time you drop dead. You'll generate 1,500 tons of CO2 in the atmosphere. You'll consume or participate in the consumption of 90,000 gallons of gasoline. That is more energy, more natural resources per capita, per person, than any cult in human history. And you and I are a part of that cult. And you know what? The average American will be less alive, more confused, have more meaninglessness and depression than the average Native American 500 years ago, who, when they died, did not leave a single kilogram of energy in a pattern that was not biodegradable and sacred. We have gone backwards on the intelligence continuum because we do not have an intelligent definition for intelligence, which is always the problem in Dunning's research. The incompetent do not have the competence to grasp the extent of their own incompetence. We are too foolish to grasp the full extent of our insanity, of our absurdity. And in such a delightful state of stupidity, we turn our incompetence into superiority with the same cross-wiring as our abusers renamed their violations as love. It's so much easier to just erase the word and write it on the other side of the equation than it is to actually figure out how to turn the equation around. I'm losing money at the rate of $1 million a day. Why don't I just erase the minus, put a plus in, and now I look highly profitable? We're number one. Keep it up. Keep it up. Let's head faster into that good night. So, the child, the adolescent, the infant are in a completely dependent state on their family system and cult. In a paradigm that is largely reptilian, where the law of mass is the predominant law. Now, how does the law of mass express itself? And what do cults want from their children, their infants, their adolescents? You see, cults are not sane. They're not intelligent. We're not even intelligent enough to have a definition of intelligence that is intelligent. Intelligence is measured by the efficiency with which time, money, and natural resources are transformed into sustainable well-being, the most innate drive of every human in human history. Every human in the history of humanity, every human, not necessarily every reptile, every human has wanted to feel sustainably better and avoid feeling chronically worse. Has wanted to feel sustainably better and avoid feeling chronically worse. That's our drive. That's innate. Intelligence is measured by how efficiently we do that. If that's the primary goal, to feel better, sustainably, on all the dimensions that we exist, then our intelligence can be measured by how efficiently we do that. If we were to say that all human beings in the history of humanity wanted to get to this finger, that's all that matters, then if we see someone wandering around going this way and that way and roundabout here and then parking here for 2,000 years and then going around this and doing everything but get there, we would have to say, you want to get to the finger? Oh, I want to get to the finger. Why aren't you getting it? Why aren't you going there? Oh, I am. Oh, you should just see. I'm working really fast. Oh, you should no idea. You say you're a fool. How dare you call me a fool? I'm working hard. I'm getting a job. I'm getting a degree. Yeah, but you're not actually moving to the finger. Yes, I am. Because every cult makes a promise, and it's a self-referential promise, as all endless loops are. The promise is, do what we do. Do what's always been done. And one of these days, you'll be healthy, wealthy, and wise. And being healthy, wealthy, and wise is the epitome. It's feeling good sustainably. So if you can just get healthy, wealthy, and wise, you will feel good sustainably. And our cult is number one. Every cult is number one. No cult has the decency to inform you that it is an absolute moron. No cult points out the rationality that said, wait a minute, did your grandmother find sustainable well-being and happiness efficiently? Your grandfather? How about your uncle? They did what the cult said. They went and got a job. They bought a car. They did this. They went into credit card debt. They did what they were told. How happy were they? Sustainably. No, but it didn't work for anyone there, but it will work for you. Just do what they did, but get a different result. Mix up the chloroform and this and that and put it in your mouth, but don't go to sleep. Use willpower. Overcome. Be strong. Cults are insane. They're all insane, and most of them are extinct, as anthropologists are kind enough to point out. 95% or more of all cults in human history are dead, meaning they didn't make the cut. And every single one of those cults had the audacity to tell their people, we're number one, we're the best. You should be like us. Don't question anything we're doing. Don't question authority. Copy us, and you can be part of our cult. We'll take care of you. Just talk like us, use our language, use our number system, use our value hierarchy. Do the things that we do, eat the things that we eat. That's what intelligent people do. Every cult is a lie, because every cult promises that if you follow it unquestioningly, the church, the government, the politicians, the educations, if you will just do what you're told, you too can experience the same mediocrity, the same helplessness, the same confusion, the same insanity, the same discordance as everyone else in this cult. No. Everyone is happy who's healthy, wealthy, and wise, and this is what matters. So every cult tells a lie, and of course, an intelligent cult would question its own stupidity. An intelligent cult might say, you know what? There have been at least 10,000 cults in human history. 95% of them are all dead. They all lied to their people, and everyone who believed them died with the cult. You know what? Statistically speaking, that means our cult has a 95% chance of dying in the next 1,000 or so years. If we look back into the past or look across the river, and everything they're doing is patently absurd, anyone could see, then theoretically, most likely, they're looking back at us saying, what the hell are they doing? We look over there and say, you're eating grasshoppers? How disgusting. And we have another pizza and Coke and wonder why we're the most obese nation in the world. Of course, we're not as disgusting as those skinny people eating grasshoppers. Everyone should be drinking Coke and eating pizza and watching TV instead of getting some exercise. It's the way things are done. Just look around you. We're all doing it. And that's the self-referential trap of every cult. We're all doing it. There's safety in numbers. When you're a child, when you're an infant, when you're an adolescent, you cannot meet your human needs alone. You depend on your cult. The cult of your family, the cult of your culture. And so the cult of the culture is defined by the majority. The majority is always wrong. No matter what the majority is doing, there is a tiny minority that's doing it better. That's the law of the bell curve. The bell curve of innovation, which can be scientifically proven every single time, says that there's a very tiny number of early adopters that are doing things much better than the majority at any given moment in any given area. The majority is always wrong. But cults promise a false sense of certainty. Don't work and become an attorney because you like it. Of course you don't like it. Who wants to be an attorney? Who wants to do... Don't drive a this and that because you like it. No. You have to do this because you do that, and that's what people do. And you can have certainty that you can vegetate in retirement with money you have no more creativity and energy to invest and spend, and sit in front of a TV for the rest of your life after suffering for 40 years. We're all doing it. It's the thing that we do. So what cults promise is certainty. They're not intelligent. Sustainable, optimal well-being. What cult is doing it? And those that are, the other cults don't pay any attention because cults are self-referential. Now, because cults have the primary purpose not of evolving, not of helping their people, but of maintaining their own identity. Cults have a primary agenda of maintaining and sustaining and defending their identity, their pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being. And so the members of a cult have as their primary agenda, not feeling great or intelligent or anything, they have as their primary agenda maintaining their identity. This is who I am. I am the one who thinks this, but that doesn't make you happy thinking that. Don't try and take it away from me. It's who I am. I am the one who thinks this, who feels this, who does this, who says this, who's like this, who buys this. That's who I am. Yes, but it's a pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being that's miserable, that's taking vast sums of energy and just feels like shit. Why are you so attached to it? It's because I am. Why are you that way? Because I am. I am because I am because I am. We're right because we're right. We're right. You know, Trump says we're number one. Let's not stop and measure what we're number one at. Are we number one in obesity, or are we the only developed nation who doesn't have paid parental leave and childcare for both parents? What are we number one at? Don't think. Our identity is number one, and so we are number one because we said we're number one, and that's who we are. Oh, bravo, bravo, you managed to pull that one off, right? No reference to any data, because as soon as you reference data, identities are fragile. As soon as you say, I'm a kind person, and you say, well, you were very cruel to... Don't tell me that. I am a kind person, and I am not going to listen to any facts. How dare you bring facts into this conversation? I can see we're not going to get on very well. I am a kind person. We're not going to discuss it in detail, and I'm not spending any more time with you since you seem to be interested in data. Go fuck yourself. And I say that with the kindest and many blessings. Now get out of here. So we want to maintain our identity at all costs, and we pay a high price. It's really trauma management. The reptilian brain is brought into play by severe, unrepaired childhood trauma in a traumatically illiterate cult that knows how to traumatize and bully its young and not how to repair the damage and not how to understand the terrain that we're in. We are a traumatized cult that is traumatically illiterate, putting us in a spiral loop where we deny what we don't know that we don't know, and damned if we're going to let anyone point it out to us. So here we are. And a child is dependent on us. And what we demand is conformity, because I said so. And that's what the child gives every single time. You want to call hitting me love? Okay, Mom. Thanks for loving me. I know you hit me because you really care about this, and I've got to learn these things. Yes, I don't like to hit you. It hurts me so much, but you've got to learn these things. Okay, Mom, hit me again. So, in the dependent state, the number of people defines the law of mass. The majority is always wrong. We know that scientifically, relative to a distinct minority. But in the law of mass in a sociopathic domain, the number of people determines who a child will listen to. If the child pipes up and actually says something intelligent and truthful, and 80% of the family glares at them with hate, and the child gets, not that they weren't truthful, but that the truth is not welcome by the majority that they depend on to survive. So the infant makes a note, frown, tight eyes. Okay, that's hostility. Apparently I was getting too close to the truth. Now, why do you want me to, oh, that one's not true either. We can't ask why the family rewards lying. You said I wanted the truth. I gave you the truth and you punished me. So now I'm wondering, why are you punishing what you say you want? But that's getting way too uncomfortable for the family system, so I'm going to be sent to my room for 3 or 4 hours to make sure that I get what the real rules are in the cult. And when I'm willing, as soon as you're willing to come out, here we are. Oh, good. We're going to divert nicely as a family around the pink elephant in the room. You finally got it? Oh, thank heavens I didn't have to explain it to you. You belong. You'll fit in very nicely in our cult of denial and stupidity. Just have another cookie. Now, the number of people, the law. You do something intelligent. I remember getting out my chainsaw to cut a tree that had fallen across the road, and boy, was the road department furious. Who do you think you are? You're not the road department. We'll take care of it. It's like, you didn't? I've been working on this for 20, 30 minutes. Who knew when you would show up? Governments are incompetent. This road needs clearing. I have a chainsaw. Oh, they were furious. You know, there's little boxes. Why? It's not because, I mean, who wants the tree to stay on the road? I probably had more experience in that domain than they did, given the way that hiring takes place in the road department. Well, still the law. You cross this line, you're going to jail. For your own good and everyone else's. You're asked to believe that paying $100,000 of taxpayer money to lock someone up in a box is beneficial. Couldn't possibly come up with something better than that. No. Don't question it. Don't knock it. We've been putting people in boxes for hundreds of years. Now, what is approved of? The frowns, the facial expression. An infant knows that before they have language. An infant watches the eye movements. You don't think a baby playing with faces can tell what you really think? I love this baby. Gee, what did I do then? What's the pattern? What's the pattern when mom feels like she's going to kill me? What is it? Have I told the truth? Has dad walked in and told one of his lies and mom said she felt fine when she's obviously seething inside? What's the pattern? Conformity is very reassuring because that's the main thing a cult can offer. Safety through repetition. You can depend on the same outcome if you behave the same way, which gives you certainty. And that's what a job does, or what a cult does. Its job is to create a status quo that makes most of life heavily boring, of course, but safe because you know how boring it's going to be, and you know why, and you know how the boredom is going to work. I mean, we can't just have people walking up and hugging each other because they're operating in a different, or kissing each other on both cheeks, or men holding hands. What are they thinking? Don't they understand that we walk solidly and hold our face in tense, unemotional postures, and we say, how are you? We say, I'm fine. We say, that's very nice, and then we walk on and often don't even wait for the answer. Don't you understand? That's what we do in our cult. Conformity, normalcy, fear of the unknown. And you buy the things that other people are buying. You're a boy. What are you doing buying dolls? Oh, this will never do. I thought you were my son. You're no son of mine. Get out of here. We buy beer in this house, and don't you forget it. If you want to live, that is. Okay, Dad. What kind of beer should I be drinking? Well, now that you mention it, now that you're growing up, here's this one. It tastes pretty foul. Well, it makes you feel foul the next day, but this is what men do. I see. How wonderful. And you'll give me free room and board as long as I buy into this bullshit? Absolutely, but don't call it bullshit. I mean, secretly we'll acknowledge that your mother's full of shit, and she can acknowledge that he's full of shit. But don't you dare actually bring the shit to awareness, because then the system falls down, then we don't know what to expect, then we're afraid of the unknown, which contains our deepest fears, of our deepest pains, being relived from past trauma. So we're in the dependent state, and the law of mass dominates. When you are dependent for your needs on your cult, on your family, you look around to see what's the majority going to do. Because whatever the majority does, that is the cult. It doesn't need to be, and it often is not intelligent. It is the cult. We all wear uncomfortable business suits in Africa to show how civilized we are relative to the heathens. You mean to say if I don't wear an awful wool business suit, I'm not going to be taken seriously? That's right. If you want to be part of the cult of serious, superior business people who do the most inane and stupid things, but let's not get into that. If you want to be part of the superior cult of traditional business people, then you have to dress to be taken seriously. We all do this. I mean, it makes absolutely no sense, but don't question it. Okay, well, I want to be taken seriously. Well, put on the damn suit. Start sweating like the rest of us. So you have stupidity, you have dependence, you have the cult, you have trauma, you have scarcity, you have fear, and it's all in the reptilian brain. Because the mind is highly creative. The individual is tending towards mutation and uniqueness and experimentation and play. It's in our nature. But when our play, when our uniqueness terrifies and frightens the grown-ups, the giants around us, into so many frowns and hits and squeezes and ostracization that we get the message, they are going to kill us if we behave authentically, uniquely, and intelligently. Then we get out the knives and we start cutting away at our truths and burying our authenticity and hiding our creativity so it won't upset them, so they won't scowl at us and forget to give us our bottle. Or better yet, the breast. So this is the law of impact, the law of mass, the law of fear, the law of dominance, the law of superior competence. You know, if you know how to shoot a gun at age 30 and you don't at age 5, it doesn't matter that you are right. It doesn't matter if you are more intelligent at age 5 than the 30-year-old. The 30-year-old knows how to aim and pull the trigger, and you get in the crosshairs of their agenda, which for a traumatized person in a reptilian cult, the number one marriage, the number one loyalty at the root of every single reptile is avoiding the fear of pain. And when that is impossible in a traumatic and reptilian cult, it is avoiding being exposed to the fear of that pain. And you reminded me of my helplessness. So I'm going to kill you. Or hope you get in a traffic accident. I won't do it myself because I'm a coward. Not because I'm noble or anything. I'll pretend I am, oh yes, and do this. But I'm too cowardly. Nietzsche pointed out that tremendous amounts of morality and superiority are nothing more than cowardice of individuals who are afraid of getting caught carrying out the many malicious revenges they would like to dish out on the people around them, but lack the mass and confidence in themselves to pull it off and stay alive. So they just think it and then pretend to be superior and moralistic. I didn't kill him because I'm superior, as opposed to, I wondered if someone would come and I'd be caught, then I would lose everything. Oh, so I just didn't say anything. Now, once we move into independence, this is the domain of the adult. Now, it's the domain of the adult for a very important reason. You don't find many adults in the cult. So to become an adult, to move out of the fear reptilian brain and become an adult, you have to become an adult towards your own infant, child, adolescent. Because in most cases, nobody else will. Nobody else learns to love your inner child, your inner infant. No one else is going to heal the trauma that was done to you at 3 years old. So if you don't do it, in most cases, you'll stay traumatized. You'll stay dissociative. You'll stay sociopathic. You'll stay split and disintegrated. This part of you will try to protest the abuse, and this part will say, don't protest the abuse, it gets even worse. He hits you even harder if you say no. This one says no, and this one says don't say no. He hits you even harder if you say no. This one says run, and this one says no, they always catch you. And when he does, it's going to be worse. Don't run. Participate. Let yourself be violated. Schizophrenics do not grow out of nothing. Schizophrenic cults that are dissociated, that are insane, that are disintegrated, produce mirrors of themselves in the next generation. It is absurd to look at a schizophrenic and say, why are you so messed up? If you put oil in the water, the otters and the seals that swim ashore will be covered in oil. And some won't survive. It doesn't make any sense to ask them why they are so oily and dirty. It makes sense to ask who put the oil in the water. And why must so much of our wildlife swim through an oil slick? Just trying to live. Schizophrenic people are born out of schizophrenic cults. We're bringing democracy to the world, except when we prop up dictatorships with tax money and give weapons to terrorists. You don't think a little schizophrenia is involved in that? We're here to give you an education as long as you don't think and question the teachers. You don't think there's a little schizophrenia? We're your therapist and we like you. So shut up and be abused with our stupidity. Nothing a little schizophrenic there? We're your parents and we love you. That's why we're hitting you. And don't talk back. If that isn't enough to make someone insane by the age of reason, what is? It's obviously making some of us crazy some of the time in some areas. But is that any surprise? It's just insane for such a cult behaving that way to pretend that it wants us to be number one. That it is number one. I mean, how much of a brain fuck is that? This is number one? I'd understand if you were apologizing and say, look, cults have been stupid for the last 30,000 years. 95% of them are dead. We're next. Almost certain, guaranteed. We don't know what the fuck we're doing. None of us have emotional training. Did you know we didn't get a single hour of parental competency training or assessment? I don't even know what intergenerational abuse has been going on in your father because we don't talk about that sort of thing in this house. Addiction runs in the family, but we're not dealing with that. We're all sweeping it under the table. So, you expect us to teach you how to live your life intelligently? Forget it. Your chances are less than 1%. We ruin most of them, but a few survive. We didn't get around to them. We weren't successful enough at brainwashing them, but we went for all of them, and a few little tidbits survived. No, we don't get the decency of a little truthfulness. No, we're wonderful. This family is loving. This is the nature of this family. We want you to be happy. As long as you can do all the things that make you miserable first, we'd love you to be happy. So once you become independent, it means that you transcended that. You figured out how to love that infant that nobody could love in a cult that is parentally, traumatically, and psychologically illiterate. You figured out how to love that infant who was desperately trying to survive by figuring out what all the majority wanted. You figured out how to love that child when nobody taught you what love was. What is love? What's a good definition of love, sir? A cogent, an intelligent definition? Anything? No. You're just part of the cult that deifies love but doesn't have a single cogent definition. You think sex is love. The rapists agree with you. Come on, come on, come on. No. We're too dumb to know that we're dumb. How can we possibly love a child intelligently? So if you're an adult, it's because you grew up. You transcended the brainwashing of your cult. And how did you do it? How did you transcend all that? You learned to love the parts that no one else could love. The parts that otherwise get dissociated and fixated and stuck in trauma. You're independent of the cult because you no longer need the cult to survive. Why? Because you figured out how to survive yourself. You no longer need the cult for security of survival. You've created that for yourself. You've given yourself love and belonging. You've decided what your values are, and you have enough money, enough talent, enough stuff that you can live your values, and they don't have to coincide with the cult. You don't have to conform anymore. But until you reach that point of competency to meet your own human needs, you are dependent on the cult, the community, the guru, the dogma, the church, the family. You are dependent on the cult until you reach that time. Then it's what's the majority doing, what's going to upset so-and-so, and it's all out of fear. If I don't do this, I will not make enough money. If I don't have enough money, I will be condemned. If I'm condemned, I can't fight the cult because I lose, because I need it. I've got to get the cult's approval so that I can live, so I can meet my needs. Self-esteem becomes outside validation. What do you want me to be? What do you value? You like discipline and hard work? Doesn't make any sense to me, but hey, I want you to like me. I want you to be proud of me. So then you'll leave me money in your will. So you'll tell your friends about me and they'll hire me. I want to be professional. What is professional, Dad? Well, you don't take your personal feelings to the job market. Oh, I see. I become a robot and have no feelings. Yes, yes. It's very professional. Don't have any feelings. And if you do, don't let anyone see them. That's professional. Oh, I see. You mean people will pay me lots of money and I can survive if I hide all my feelings and make polite nonsense? Yes. Okay, that's what I'll do. Complete, utter, it's a joke. But it is survival. It's not particularly fun, but you're getting by. You're moving from one year to the next. When you're independent, that doesn't have impact. You can pity people rushing off in a herd over a cliff. You can notice that people are buying the things that make their problems worse and tell them candidly if they ask you, what do you think of my purchase? I think it's absolutely insane. Why? Well, you got a fucked up marriage, you're parentally illiterate, you're raising another child, you've already traumatized the first, you haven't spent a dime on therapy, and you haven't read any books. You don't have a lot of money, and you're buying a third car? A race car? It's patently insane. That's what I think. Well, I'm not going to ask you anymore. People are supposed to like cars in this cult, and most people would have the decency to tell me that my car was a great choice and that I deserve it after suffering in a job that I hate, like the rest of the cult. And I had no idea that there'd be weirdos like you that actually think such things. So I bought the car because I was supposed to, because that's how you're supposed to pamper yourself at my age in life after suffering. So anyway, whatever you are, you're not part of my cult, and I'm not going to refer any business to you. That's why you need independence, to be honest. You have to meet your own needs to survive and feel secure and have a sense of love and belonging. Because when everyone hates you and fears you as soon as you tell them the truth, if that shuts you down because you have no source of self-love, because you have no one in the cult who will love you for being authentic, for mutating as part of life's iterative plan of growth and evolution. When you're independent, it's your ideals that have the impact, and you violate your ideals. You violate your ideals. And you hurt because they're your ideals, not someone else's. You love the symmetry and beauty of truth. You didn't get to say the truth there because you would have been beaten. And you didn't want to be beaten again and feel helpless. So you lied. And you went separate from your truth. You have principles. You're unique. You do what's fun for you. When you are abundant in the fulfillment of your human needs, you do what is fun for you. Why? Because fun is the ultimate value. It's the only thing that makes self-referential sense. People talk about, I want to be free. Why? So that you can vegetate and get fat in front of a TV? That's what you want? No, I want to be free. Why? So I can do what I want to do. Well, what is that? I don't know. So who cares about freedom if you don't even know what it is? You see, freedom is useful because it gives you power. And power, who needs power? Well, power is useful because it allows you to create certain things. So what? Well, if you can create certain things, you can create some things that are good. So what? Well, if you create things that are good, it's fun. It's more fun than creating suffering. And if you create some things that are good, that are beautiful, they're fun. Why do you want to have fun? Because it's fun. Fun makes sense as a self-referential loop. Power does not. I want to have power. Why? So I can have power. Why? Because it's more fun to have power than to be powerless. It may be fun to be powerless and blame and punish people, rather than to be powerless and not blame and punish people, but it's more fun to be powerful and have fun, to consciously create fun. I want to be successful. Why? Because it's fun. It's more fun to be successful than not to be successful. Fun is self-referential. I want to have fun. Why? Because it's more fun to have fun than to not have fun. It's a stable, intelligent, self-referential pinnacle because it means you've arrived. Remember the base drive of all of humanity, certainly once you come online with the empathic brain, to feel sustainably better and avoid feeling chronically worse. That's what fun is. And to feel consciously, masterfully fun for no other reason than that it is fun. And it's more fun to be masterfully fun than to be helplessly fun. I had fun, then I'm not having fun and I have no idea what went on. It's more fun to say I had fun and I know how I created that fun and I'm going to create some more. It's more fun. It's the highest pinnacle. It's the highest drive. To consciously create sustainable fun for no other reason than that it's fun, because it's more fun to have fun than not to have fun. It's a complete loop. That's where we're heading. When every single human being can get there, having fun because it's more fun to have fun than not to have fun, having fun masterfully because it's more fun to be masterful than it is to be incompetent, and having fun sustainably because it's more fun to have sustainable fun than to fall down every other hour into misery and despair. When we do that, what is the most fun? It is more fun to love than to hate. It is more fun to give and co-create than it is to pursue entitlement agendas. It is more fun to forgive than it is to hate and seek revenge. It is more fun to play than it is to suffer and be filled with misery. It's more fun to have a balance of healthy masculine and feminine energy in men and in women than it is to create cult-based dogmas that pretend one gender is better than the other or one energy polarity. Once you take half the universe and you take the whole universe and you cut it in half and you say this half is bad and this half is good, it's less fun than seeing how all the fun can be co-created by putting the illusion of separation back together and becoming part of something bigger than ourselves, because it's more fun than the petty little tininess of our current identity. This is me and that's not me. Nope, that's not me. Nope, you didn't understand. No. This is what I think, and this is what I feel, and this is why nope, that's not it. That's it. Nope, you got that wrong. Oh, it's more fun to point out everyone's mistakes than it is to be helplessly and invisibly lonely. But it is more fun to transcend. It is more fun to let go of the old identity, the old pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being, in favor of a new pattern. It is more fun to be aware of our interconnectivity in an ecology that is bigger, more dimensional, more meaningful than we, the limited self. It is more fun to do that than it is to hang on to our petty myopia and our fixations on the past. And so when we have mastery in that domain, we will step in that direction. And until such time, while we are dependent, it is more fun to feel a part and belonging to a dysfunctional cult than to feel terrified and wondering whether or not we will survive. And it is more fun to meet our needs than it is to depend on incompetent reptiles to meet our needs for us. It is more fun to love ourselves as an adult, to love enough to care enough to take time, to take enough time to see enough to understand enough to empathize enough to attune enough to succeed at meeting first our need for survival, security, love and belonging, self-esteem, the development of our talents, the bringing of those talents abundantly into the world, and the participation in an energy that is bigger than ourselves. And then help another. Because love is a virus. All energy is contagious. All technology is contagious. And once I love myself fully, and my adolescent, my child, my infant, feel nurtured and loved, it releases the consciousness from the myopia of the past and the limited identity to be aware of other, of the larger ecology of which I am a part. That is 99.999% of who I am in the existence out there, rather than the tiny little sliver of a sliver of a sliver that I am in here. When the children are fed, the adult is born that can now love another, to love enough to care about you, for you. I don't need you for my needs. I need my adult for that, and I've met those needs. I can love you for the joy of loving you. To love you enough to care enough to see you enough to understand you. Not enough to judge you, enough to understand you. To understand you enough to empathize. Because if I'm not empathizing with you, I'm either in my reptilian brain and haven't loved myself, or I don't understand you yet. To understand you enough to empathize with you not just enough to say, well, I fully empathize with you, but I'm going to do exactly what I was going to do otherwise, and I don't care how it affects you. No, I understand you enough to empathize. I empathize enough to make adjustments, to attune. And I tune enough to succeed at helping and supporting and championing you, meeting your needs to survive, feel secure in that survival, experience love and belonging, experience self-esteem, to develop values, to know what I'm good at, to bring my gifts meaningfully into the world, to become part of something bigger. I can love you enough to support you in that. And if you want nothing to do with me, I can love you enough to have that space. And I don't need you to give me your body or your money or whatever, because I'm independent. Why? Because it's more fun to be independent than it is to be dependent. It's more fun to be an adult, able and willing to respond to first my own needs and then others, than it is to be a child in desperate need of someone to take care of me, It's more fun to be an adult than it is to be a child. If you are a child, it's more fun to be taken care of than to be abandoned. But if you can love your child enough that you can grow up, if in a sociopathic and incompetent cult that is chauvinistic and emotionally illiterate, you can figure out how to love yourself despite all the cult dogma, it is more fun to be an adult than an adolescent in desperate lust and I need this, and I want this, I want to. It's more fun to be filled with abundance, which only the adult can do. And it's more fun to love another than to not love another. And so you do. And once you love another, once you love enough to care enough to take time enough to see enough to understand enough to empathize enough to attune enough to succeed at helping someone else survive, feel secure, experience love and belonging, develop their own values and live up to them, celebrate them. Develop their talents, bring those talents abundantly and valuably into their cult, and become part of something bigger than themselves. You know what? They have caught the virus, and they will love themselves. And you know what else? They will feel grateful. They will feel joy in your presence. They will feel alive. They will feel seen and safe and secure with you. They will feel loved by you. And the happiness and the gratitude that they feel will result in contagion. Adult love has germinated in another human being and become adult, and then adult love. And now there is one more person around you capable of love. And if they are an adult and capable of loving you and capable of loving themselves, they can then love others. And the contagion, the virus of love, the pattern of adult love can spread. And it will catch on eventually. It may be stomped out, eradicated, exterminated, fearfully, traumatically, violently. We've done it many times as a species. Killed off truth, beauty, goodness in the name of the cult. We've burned witches at the stake. We've excommunicated scientists. We've banished pedophilic incest survivors for talking about their abuses in the Catholic Church. We have killed beauty, truth, and goodness 10,000 times in 10,000 dogmas, in 10,000 cults, and we're not going to stop anytime soon, because the adult is not afraid of change. The adult is not afraid of the new. The adult is becoming more and does not subscribe to the dogma of the cult. The adult is going towards the unknown, towards balance, towards grace, towards symmetry, to an honoring of the goddess, an honoring of the feminine as equal with the masculine, and that brings massive amounts of disruptive change. It undermines every dogma of every institution in our cult and exposes every dogmatic adherent to the cult, to their greatest terror, which is the fear of the unknown, which is the fear of the feminine. A traumatized cult fears the reenactment, the re-exposure to their trauma more than any other thing.